Right, so thanks for staying with us. This week, we focus on understanding world peace and conflict prevention. Yes, about time too. And we have a man who's grounded and experienced in this area. He is Adebayo Olowo, Director and Research Fellow at the African Resource Development Center here in Lagos. He will be joining us at the appropriate time.
Yeah, the professionals in real estate, M.I. Okoro and Associates, are back also with new information and unbeatable offers capable of changing your story on the Global Real Estate and Housing Solutions segment with M.I. Okoro and Associates.
Yeah.
And Dolly Phillips, the beautiful Keep Fit coach, gets more daring today in the gym and challenges you all to join her and work out with her team.
Yeah, and then, of course, the icing on the cake, literally speaking, that is the lifestyle and wellness segment with Ferron Shonuga, plus some stops here and there to bring you some really important information.
Exactly, and I'll line up for a very interesting conversation today, that is, not to forget the closing tape on public speaking from yours truly, John, right here. Okay, so...
Thanks, Helen.
We move on.
Yeah, like we said, it's been quite a week for Nigerians, and we will not forget it in a hurry too. Is there anything on our minds before we dive into the program?
John, is there really anything new? I mean, the last 2-3 weeks, 1 month has been... There's a word I dare not use on television, but it's been difficult. It's been awesome. It's been confusing. And the questions on a lot of people's lips and hearts and mouths is, why? Why all of this journey? Why all of this rigmarole? Why all of this trouble? When just yesterday we have been told that, the reason for which we have been suffering, is needless.
Have you been suffering?
Man, the Supreme Court has come out to say all of the rigmarole has been needless. We're back spending all of the money that we...
Hang on. Let me ask you. Do you think that piece of good news is for you?
Who should it be for? I'm a Nigerian.
Because it's not for me. I've literally spent all the money I have, and I still
you don't have any money.
I can't access the money in the bank.
Yeah, but we've been told. I've heard a few.
Spend the old notes that I've already given out, and so it doesn't make any difference to my life, does it? To yours?
Exactly.
So that news is not for me. It's probably for those of you.
Where I'm asking, for you to even get the 200 back in the banks, and
plus the 50 naira.
So now, how soon?
Look, let me have access to my money in the bank.
Don't hold on you.
Don't restrict me to 5,000 or 10,000.
I'm telling you.
And then I will say thank you.
I'm telling you. Oh,
so that's what I want to hear now, really.
Well,
any other thing you want to talk about?
No. Sure? Let's just get on with the program and get back to our lives. Let's have our lives back. Okay. Let's have our lives back.
And that will include being able to drive into the filling station and have your card accepted.
As we're going cashless, totally, Abby.
Yeah, because now the POS machines are not working in the filling stations. They're not accepting transfers. They're insisting on cash.
Because transfers will take like forever. Yeah, and they won't let you out until they have confirmation.
Well, anyway, remember the conversation this week is on world peace and conflict prevention. Very timely, you'd agree with me. And joining us is a man versed in this subject. In fact, someone who has spent over 20 years helping nations and people understand the concept of peace, with particular interest in public communication, regional security, architecture, and post-conflict reconstruction. Please help us welcome my good old friend, Bayo Olowo. Olowo.
Okay.
Yeah, Olowo, yes.
Good morning, John. Good morning, Helen. And good morning, viewers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. World peace, national peace, whatever you call it, at the moment is what is urgently, seriously needed. Can we get to it?
Yeah, Bayo, let me ask you. And I think you were picked specially
For this subject.
for this topic.
I'm put on the hot seat.
because I mean, I know you've been around the world. You know, you've done several things at the other end of peace, right? Trying to help out. Mm-hmm. So you may just be able to answer some of these questions, because peace always seems elusive in the world. Is it that we don't understand what peace is? What is world peace? Let's even start from there.
That's a very good question. It might not have a definitive answer, but we could identify its features.
Okay.
You know, some people have said that peace is the most basic definition, is to say peace is the absence of war, or peace is the absence of
conflict,
disequilibrium, disturbances. You know, when you don't have any of those, you are at peace. Of course, if peace is the absence of war, then what is war? In order for us not to have it, in order for us to have peace.
Yes.
You know, this would be an academic definition, that war is the continuation of policy by other means. Continuation of politics by other means.
Okay.
Scary definition. But if you look at I like to go back to the origin of man. Okay, if we go into anthropology and we look at the origin of man, his development through time, and his adaptation to his environment, which is what anthropology is.
Yeah.
And when I say man, I'm talking of everyone, including women, including children. So,
I'm happy.
Yeah. Now, when man was said to be a hunter-gatherer, just roaming around, picking up fruits and all that, because this was how actually man was before he had a settled lifestyle.
Yeah.
Okay? And it is said that man had a settled lifestyle when he discovered fire.
Yes.
Because with fire, he could scare away wild animals. With fire, he could keep warm. And then he started living in rock shelters, in caves. And if you read some of the holy books, you would find that even people are being buried in caves as well. Now, why am I giving this background? Because when man was a hunter-gatherer, roaming around, he had nothing to defend. He had nothing to defend. When man became settled, what was called the New Stone Age Revolution, Neolithic Revolution, he now had a property, he had a farm, he had possession, he had territory, right? And with that came conflict. Because now he has something to defend. And if anyone intruded, he protected his space, right? Maybe his agricultural yields were poor, for example, in a particular season. And he also now wanted to go to someone who had a better yield. You know, either take by force or conflict emerged. So essentially, the moment you have something, possessions, whatever they are,
you want to protect.
Yes, your interests are likely to collide with the interests of someone else, and that is conflict. Wow. So we cannot eliminate conflict because it will continue to happen, right? What we do is to manage conflict. And when states, because states are like human beings, in the international system we use the word states, we don't say countries. So when states relate internationally, which is what we call international relations, when they relate with themselves, they also have interests, and when their interests collide with that of another state, we have conflict. And the conflict might be resolved by diplomacy, that is, by discussion, by give and take, by negotiation.
That's right.
Which is exactly how human beings function. The hunter-gatherer who now has a settled lifestyle, and whose interest, whose territory, or whose property is being coveted, or whatever, and who has to defend it, if he's capable of defending, if the potential adversary is not huge and overwhelming, you know, they will resolve it. But if it's someone who is too powerful for him, he moves away. So I think that just gives us a perspective.
That indeed gives us a very deep understanding, you know, into the beginning of this
Conflicts
whole idea
and wars
of,
and all of that.
you know, what's peace, what is conflict. But you see, we've always aimed at achieving peace, you know, because it's like that's the ultimate.
Yes.
Or that's the better option, right? How successful do you think we've been in attaining a
peace.
peaceful world?
I think we have to a very large extent, you know. And why do I say that? We have 194 states, if I'm correct. 194 states in the international system, without counting principalities, you know, and smaller entities that are protected by other states. Now, out of these 194, if we look at how many places that has conflict, you would see that off the top of my head, maybe we have 30, 40 conflicts. They are bad in themselves. For as long as people are being killed, it's bad. So I don't want to be misunderstood. But if we look relatively, you know, in terms of the total number of states,
Yes.
and you look potentially at the total number of conflicts between states,
Yes.
okay? And then we look at now how many actually degenerated into armed conflict, what we call armed conflict. I think we're not doing too badly. I think most of the world is actually, or if conversely we break it down into continents. If you go to the Pacific, for instance, I don't think there's any active conflict in the Pacific. If you go to South America, the last conflict was in Colombia between the FARC, Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, and the state of Colombia, and that ended, you know, long ago. So in South America, I doubt if there's any conflict.
That is between states.
Between states,
Yeah.
and even internally there could be tensions. There could be tensions. In North America, we also don't have, although Mexico is busy with drug cartels. They had this big
it's a thin
issues,
line between tensions and conflicts.
Yeah, so the problems are around Asia and Africa, okay? And then if you look at the number of conflicts in themselves, they went down until we had this Sahelian insurgent acts, you know, in Mali, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, Cameroon, Niger, Chad, around the Lake Chad area with the ISWAP and Boko Haram. But overall, if you really look at it, and then of course, there's what I call high profile. When you have a high profile conflict, you tend to think the whole world is at war.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you have with the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
yeah.
It's a high-profile conflict. It has potentials actually of destabilizing. It has reasonably destabilized the equilibrium in this. Yeah, and then because one of the parties is a nuclear power, and then one of the parties backing, one of the states backing Ukraine is also a nuclear power, the United States. It ups the ante, so to speak, So high-profile conflicts tend to give us impression the whole world is upside down.
Okay, so let's dig deeper into your work as a Red Cross ambassador, you know, from where you recently retired now, soothing the post-war wounds of many. Don't you think that the world has had to pay a huge price for the attainment of peace?
You're right, the world has had to pay a huge price. If I go back into history, now I'm not sure how current I am on that, but there's this argument that globally we have about 4,000 years of recorded history. Okay, we have ancient kingdoms like Babylon, Iraq, you know, if you count all the way back. So let's say, for the purpose of argument, about 4,000 years of recorded history. We've only had peace relatively for 500 years. That is when you would say the entire system, the entire global system, doesn't have any.
And it's still relatively, not
Exactly,
an absence of it.
It's still relative. So we've paid a big price. If you look at the casualties, you know, it's extremely worrisome and terrifying. If you also consider that as we advance, as civilizations advance, that level of advancement is also reflected in military technology.
That's right.
You know, and once it's reflected in military technology, and if that military technology some 30 years ago, most weapons were only in the hands of the state. Today, there's hardly any kind of weapon, maybe with the exception of nuclear weapons, that you do not find in the hands of non-state actors.
I like the way you put it.
You know, including communication devices, which play a critical role in conflict because they need to move troops, they need to move logistics, so they need to communicate. Okay, so this advancement in technology has also significantly worsened because the state has regulatory mechanisms, you know, for holding accountable those who have been trained to defend the state and who in doing so may have to kill. So you have the barracks, a very basic example. You keep soldiers in the barracks because they've been given a particular skill and you need to account for their whereabouts at any given point in time. Yeah. But non-state actors don't have barracks, you know. And some of the weapons today that have proliferated, they're in the hands of people. Borders are porous.
Even the
drones,
the internet.
The internet, absolutely.
Yeah,
so this is why the price is becoming, it's been a huge price, and it's increasingly becoming even bigger, you know. And that's why all efforts must be done, and I keep saying this, to make sure we do not end up, states don't end up resolving conflicts, either between themselves, which is interstate or international armed conflicts, or within themselves, which is intrastate.
Which really brings us to the next to the next question, because I think I'm privileged to have known you, Bayo, for many years now, and I know that you have a solid background in communication. Now, in your opinion, do you think we are doing enough in communication towards promoting peace in the world? Is the communication right? Is it there? Is it enough?
At two levels, the international level and the intra-state level, I don't think we are doing enough. I don't think we are doing enough. For example, I hold strongly to the view that the conflict in Ukraine could have been prevented. I hold strongly to that view. And I feel that some international actors, some bodies, if they had played their roles properly, they probably could have prevented it, or at least not have allowed the degeneration, the lamentable degeneration that we are witnessing. At the level of states, I think also we tend to take a lot of things for granted. And then we assume that things will always remain the same. They will always be calm. You know, people who are aggrieved will not be able to do anything about it. They just have to accept it. You know? So if you find that in countries where you have had especially intra-state conflicts, what we call civil wars, right? Or in legal terms, we call them non-international armed conflicts, you would find that usually these states ended up in conflict because of impunity. Because maybe the political elite feel we will do whatever we want to do and nothing is going to happen. You know, they have to accept it. They can't do anything about it. Unfortunately, the world has changed significantly. I mean, we just talked about changes in communications technology, changes in weapon systems, and so on and so forth. Then increase in population, huge increase in population, extremely intelligent and educated population, especially younger people. In many countries, the bulk of the population are young people. You know, it's only in a few countries, especially at the advanced countries, where we find a stagnation, so to speak, in population.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Now, you just brought us closer home, okay? So let's look at our dear country, Nigeria. Aren't we caught in war with a nonchalant attitude towards peace? You know, you said something about it now with the political elite and what they're doing to say nobody can do anything about it. You know, considering what's going on at this point in time. Don't you think?
You know, one interesting thing is that in many states you have agencies of the state that are supposed to enlighten people, influence people, so to speak, to do the right things. Okay, in the case of Nigeria, we have the National Orientation Agency. I think the last I heard of the National Orientation Agency, I may be so outdated, was the Jerry Ghana days when it was MAMSA.
Yeah.
You know, I think it came from MAMSA before it assumed the name of National Orientation Agency. And people might, if you go back and reflect, they were quite successful in influencing the population, mobilizing the population, and so on and so forth. I think that maybe we haven't seen much of the National Orientation Agency now, because it's one of the agencies that can not only help, you know, enlighten, but also mitigate sometimes misunderstandings, because you can have conflict just purely out of misunderstanding.
The Institute of International Affairs?
The Institute of International Affairs is a think tank. Okay. It's a government think tank. And it's been extremely influential in previous, I think up to, but strangely, in my view, it was quite influential under the military. Yeah, since we returned to democracy, I don't think we've consulted or leveraged on the NIA as much as we did, because the so-called activist foreign policy of the Muritala Obasanjo years was a product of the NIA, you know, and I think up to Babangida's time. But in Nigeria, I think, and by the way, not just Nigeria, many countries today, social media, you have drivers. You have drivers of conflict. You know, first, impunity, not just by political elites, even in corporate settings, where somebody says, okay, you're working very hard, but you are not going to be promoted. There's nothing you can do about it. Or, you know, you can replicate that across many areas of human interaction. And those things, what they do, that kind of attitude, that kind of impunity, is that it creates frustration, it can lead to depression, and it could lead to counter-reaction.
Yeah.
Okay, which in the case of a state could be violence.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be criminality, because sometimes if you psychologists say that some criminal elements are actually people revolting against the state, where they found that they have absolutely nothing more. The state is not interested in their well-being.
That's right.
There's nothing for them. So when you now add to all of this the issue of impunity, yes, there's a risk that we are caught in, you know, conflicts, and violent conflicts.
When you talked about the National Orientation Agency, I smiled because just before we came on set, I was having some discussion with her.
Experience.
And I was trying to explain to her that I think, in my personal view, that Nigerians are we're ruled by sentiments. One sentiment.
John, that is a conversation because you and I never agreed.
Helen,
all right, so we could be on that from now till tomorrow.
I will resolve the conflict.
You know? So can we keep that? Wow, thank you. Can we keep that conflict after we come back from the break?
We'll take a break and then we'll talk about
so it was
sentiments. Nigerians being ruled by sentiments. Don't go away.
Okay, we shall return shortly with the second and concluding part of our conversation today with Adebayo Olowo Ake. Please don't go away.
The show is today with John and Helen live. We're coming to you from the studios of PlusTvAfrica here in Lagos, Nigeria.
And this week our interest is understanding world peace and conflict prevention. We shall use the time left to leave a lasting impression, I believe,
Yes.
with our guests
And
still
we left
here.
off somewhere, don't forget. We actually left off on the issue of, Nigerians hugely being ruled by sentiments, either ethnic, religious, whatever. And when you talked about the National Orientation Agency, my mind just went there. That this is something for them to pick up, so that we get out of certain mindsets, and begin to look at things more, what's the word now?
Holistically?
Yeah,
In
So,
the direction of unity, like we're one,
yeah, because
kind of.
quite frankly, you find that so many of us we're influenced by some
Yeah, we're human
sentiments or the
beings.
other.
I think, yeah, exactly.
We're
I
human
think,
beings.
actually, I think everywhere people are ruled by, people take decisions. There's always an element of sentiment
True.
in decisions that are taken. I think the challenge is the degree to which sentiment is allowed to actually determine decisions that are taken. One of the interesting things that I find, in Nigeria is when we feel that if the president is from my area, it means things are better for me, or if the governor is from my village, it means things are better for me. But we know that this is not, it doesn't always translate into.
Doesn't.
So that sentiment is, by now, for instance, people should understand that it's usually not true. It doesn't usually work. So that sentiment ought to be
And that
to be
conversation
discarded.
has to hold.
Yes,
it should
exactly.
be
And
ongoing.
and this is where, for instance, we talked about the National Orientation Agency, but in its absence, we've had celebrities, and I think most of our celebrities should be commended because a lot of them have actually weighed in on trying to use their influence positively. I mean, reasonably so for many of them. For instance, recently asking people not to be allowed to be influenced, into going to damage things, create problems.
Yeah.
And I really commend them for that because this is using the large following they have, and the great influence that they have in positive ways. But one of the things which can actually enhance people believing that at least mitigating or whittling down this huge influence by sentiment is if the instruments of the state work well and work in a way that shows they have not been compromised. Again, across countries now, it's true for us as it's true for many countries. Once citizens know that the instruments of the state set up for their own protection or for resolving their own disputes, whether it's a corporate dispute, legal disputes, political disputes, if citizens are persuaded that those instruments will deliver on their mandate.
Like the judicial.
Yes, like the judiciary, like the law enforcement agencies, and so on. Then you would find that most of this recourse to sentiments and things will actually drastically go down. Because then people would know that regardless of who is in law enforcement, regardless of who is in charge of law enforcement, regardless of who the judge is, I'm going to get justice.
It's the interest of
my
the state.
case, exactly. I'm going to get a fair hearing, and my interests will be well protected. And this is what I think we need to really begin to work hard at.
Okay.
If we can put our energies into that, I think it will help us attain a more, let me find the right word. It will help us gain equilibrium, gain more equilibrium in terms of stability and things like that.
I need us to look at development, look at poverty, economic indices back to back with world peace and conflicts. Because if you take the situation with Nigeria at the moment, and if you look at the youth, a large number of them are unemployed. And so they are more available in the absence of national orientation to positively, all right, change their perception, you know, about life, about what should be. We are almost on a time bomb. When we're almost, we really can't say what is happening. Anything can happen at any point in time. I just need you to talk to us about unemployment, youth restlessness, and all of that, as we're talking about world peace and national peace and conflict resolutions and all of that.
No, you're right, because the actors, the main actors, when the system collapses, or when the equilibrium, when you have disequilibrium and things are not working, the major actors tend to be young people. You know, positively or negatively, they tend to be young people. So it's a very valid observation. And we've seen this also in many other countries. So we need to learn from other countries as well. I personally hold the view that, you see, the transitioning away, because I've been in many conflict areas, the transitioning away from a society where, if you look at the world 40 years ago, for instance, you had a situation in which you had private enterprises, you have state-owned enterprises. The private enterprise will function completely using market forces, demand and supply, you know, what is profitable for the private entity to do or not. No sentiments, just pure business. The public enterprise would be a combination of both. Okay, we need to make profit, but we also need to hire people. We don't need to have too many, you know, create, because and then in terms of expansion, the private entity might just keep its operations in a particular area. So, okay, this is where I have my customers. Why should I have branches elsewhere? The state enterprise will be largely where those customers are, but would also have branches elsewhere. Now, we started having, especially from the Margaret Thatcher days, a clamor to privatize. To privatize. And this became the mantra of some international financial institutions and actually became a critical part of their engagement with states. If you need our support, you privatize. Your civil service is too big. I'm not saying you shouldn't prune civil services or prune if you have wastages. But the point I'm trying to make is we all moved, virtually all states moved completely to this private sector mentality, maybe with the exception of China, that has a very interesting model, which I think is worth studying. Now, we all moved almost completely to this private sector-led everything. Private sector-led everything. This is one of the major drivers of unemployment, in my view. This is one of the major drivers of unemployment. Secondly, we haven't reviewed our educational curriculum. We've spoken about it. We've made some token changes here and there. But I feel we've not significantly looked at our curriculum and reviewed them in such a way that those we are actually producing are not only employable, but can employ themselves. You know, and again, I see this in some other countries as well. So if we want to stop or mitigate or reduce this huge risk of youth unemployment, I think we need to seriously begin to look at how we can create a balance between fully private sector-led engagements and enterprises, and the need to have, for example, in some places, even public enterprises that were making a profit were privatized. So
that would be one way to avoid crises, conflicts, wars, and all of that.
Exactly, because the young people are just available, you know. Technically, we have no choice because the bulk of 70% of our population is below the age of 30. And if you look across many African countries, it's replicated. It's just the gap that is maybe not as wide as that of Nigeria, because we have a huge population. So you are saying, without any argument, that at least 100 million people in this country are below the age of 30.
Wow.
Okay.
This is huge.
We have less than 1
minute. I
minute.
knew it was a big topic.
Yes, it is.
I never even imagined
it is.
that, it would have so much attached to it.
Yeah, I believe that he has
Peace
thrown
and
a few
conflict.
things here and there that we can take away. Mother Teresa it was who captured it so well when she said, and I quote, "If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other." You believe that, don't you?
I do.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. At this point, we'd like to say thank you so very much for taking time to come. Like John said, this is huge. And this is us. This is life. So we must constantly talk about, the prospects that are available for us to ensure that peace reigns in Nigeria and in the world, if it's possible.
True. Thank you for having me.
Wow. So, Bayo, this will be regarded as a phase one, scene one, act one, of our topic. I really want to thank you so much.
Anytime. My pleasure.
For being here with us on this program.
Yeah.
So from here, we'll be moving on to our next segment.
Yes, she's always there, always ready, and inviting us to join her in the gym and inviting you out there too. With all of that, all the things happening, sometimes when you go do a lot of exercises, I see more people jogging now than I ever saw. So let's join our Keep Fit coach in the gym, Dolly Phillips, and
of course,
shake off.
You should remember also that the lifestyle and wellness segment with Farron Shurunga will come right after the Keep Fit segment.
Yes.
So let's shed off some weight first.
And today, Pharaoh is talking about the broken Nigeria. Have we abducted responsibility? And she will be speaking with Wale Irokus. Off we go to the gym. Join us.